My name is Kendra, and I'm 27 years old. The day my parents called me into the living room, I could already tell something was off. They had that careful tone, the one they used when they'd already decided my future and were just about to let me in on it. My sister Melissa was sitting next to them on the couch, calm and collected as usual, scrolling on her phone like none of this was even a big deal. I stood there, arms crossed, trying to prepare myself for whatever comparison was about to come next. They didn't waste any time. My dad cleared his throat, and without hesitation, he told me they had decided to help both of their daughters get a proper start in life. My mom smiled tightly, like this was supposed to feel generous. Then she dropped the bomb. Melissa was getting a brand new apartment in a modern downtown building, elevator, gym, security, the works. Melissa finally looked up and smiled, already picturing herself there. And then my mom turned to me. They were giving me a house. For half a second, hope flickered. A house sounded big, permanent, like maybe, just maybe, things would finally feel equal. But then they showed me the address and the photos. The hope died instantly. It was old, dilapidated, cracked walls, broken windows, a sagging roof, weeds taller than me choking the front yard. It looked abandoned, like even the city had given up on it. My mom rushed to explain that it had potential, and that I was the practical one, so this suited me better. Melissa, she said, needed something safe and ready. That was when the words burned themselves into my memory, words that later would echo across my life like a warning sign. My parents gave me an old, dilapidated house, and my sister a brand new apartment. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream that this wasn't fair, that I worked just as hard, that I'd never asked for less. But years of being the reasonable daughter kicked in. I nodded. I thanked them. I swallowed it. They signed the papers quickly. The house was mine. They said no mortgage, no rent, just mine. Melissa's apartment, on the other hand, was fully paid for by them. Furnished, decorated. My mom even picked out the curtains. A week later, I moved into the house. The first night, rain leaked through the ceiling into a bucket I'd placed in the living room. The heater didn't work. The floors creaked like they were complaining about my existence. But I stood there, in the dark, surrounded by dust and silence, and told myself, this is still something. A starting point. I worked 2 jobs. During the day, I was at my office, saving every spare dollar. At night and on weekends, I learned how to fix things. I watched tutorials, borrowed tools, scraped my knuckles raw. I repaired the roof one section at a time. I patched the walls. I cleaned out years of trash from the backyard. Slowly, painfully, the house began to change. Months passed, then a year. I turned that wreck into a home. It wasn't flashy, but it was solid, warm, and safe, the kind of place that felt earned. I planted a small garden out back. I refinished the floors myself. I even added a tiny sunroom where the broken porch used to be. That's when my parents asked to visit. My mom walked through the front door and froze. Her eyes scanned the space, the clean walls, the sunlight pouring through new windows. Her lips parted, not in pride, but in calculation. My dad stayed quiet, his jaw tight. Melissa wasn't there, but she didn't need to be. I could already hear her voice in my head. My mom finally spoke, and her words landed like a slap. When she saw what I had built, she said, "We're taking this house back. It now belongs to your sister. You have 48 hours to move out." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It didn't come. She went on, explaining how unfair it was that Melissa's apartment was too small compared to this, how family assets needed to be rebalanced. She said it like it was logical, like it was obvious. I reminded her that the house was legally mine. She waved that off, saying paperwork could be handled. My dad avoided my eyes. That hurt more than her words. 2 days later, Melissa showed up. She arrived with boxes, a rental truck parked crookedly out front, confidence dripping from every step. She was already talking about where her couch would go, how she'd repaint the bedroom. Then she walked inside fully and stopped. Her face drained of color completely. The smile vanished. Her eyes darted from the walls to the floors to the windows, like she was seeing something she didn't expect at all. That moment echoed another line that would later define everything. When my sister arrived with her boxes, her face turned pale at the scene she saw. Because what she saw wasn't just a nice house, it was something she couldn't touch, something she couldn't claim, something tied not just to walls and paint, but to the ground beneath it. And none of them yet understood the truth about that land, or why giving me this old, dilapidated house was the one mistake they'd never be able to undo. That's where everything truly began. Melissa stood there, frozen, boxes half unloaded, her confidence evaporating as she took in every corner of the house. My mom mistook her silence for awe and smiled proudly, already imagining this place as Melissa's reward. My dad cleared his throat and told me again that I had 48 hours, like repeating it would somehow make it legal or fair. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just looked at Melissa, who finally turned to me, asking, confused why I was smiling. Because, in that moment, I realized something none of them had thought to check. They'd been so focused on the house itself that they'd ignored the most important part, the land beneath it. When my parents handed me the papers a year earlier, I actually read them. Every page, every clause. The house had been written off as worthless, a liability they were happy to dump on me. But the land had never been transferred back to them. It was zoned differently from the surrounding properties, grandfathered into a commercial residential overlap from decades ago. While they were busy furnishing Melissa's apartment, I was busy fixing the house and quietly consulting a lawyer. Not to fight my parents, but to understand exactly what I owned. And what I owned wasn't just a renovated home. I owned a piece of land that a development company had been circling for years. That's why, 3 months earlier, I'd signed a conditional agreement. The developer didn't care about the house. They wanted the land, the location, the access, the zoning. The deal was simple. Once renovations met safety code, the contract would finalize. That day had come last week. The money was already in escrow. So when my mom said again, "We're taking this house back," I calmly asked her how she planned to do that. She snapped that they were my parents, that they'd given it to me, that family doesn't need permission. That's when I pulled out the folder, deed, zoning certificate, contract. I placed them gently on the kitchen counter I'd installed with my own hands. Silence fell heavy and thick. My dad picked up the papers first. His hands shook as he read. My mom leaned over his shoulder, her face tightening with every line. Melissa stepped closer, panic replacing entitlement as she realized this wasn't just about rooms and paint colors anymore. I told them the truth slowly, clearly, so there could be no misunderstanding. The house was legally mine. The land was legally mine, and in less than 2 weeks, I wouldn't own either because I was selling. Not to Melissa, not back to my parents, but to people who actually understood its value. My mom's voice cracked. She asked how much. I told her the number. Her knees nearly gave out. It was more than the cost of Melissa's apartment, more than they'd ever planned to spend on me. More than they could match. Melissa started crying, saying it wasn't fair, that she'd already told her friends she was moving in, that this was supposed to be hers. I reminded her gently that it never was. That's when the line echoed again in my mind, bitter and sharp. My parents gave me an old, dilapidated house and my sister a brand new apartment. They hadn't known who owned the land. They'd seen scraps and given me scraps, never realizing they de-handed me the foundation. They tried everything, guilt, anger, promises. My mom offered to switch, to give me the apartment instead, as if that could undo a year of dismissal. My dad said we could work something out, finally meeting my eyes, but it was too late. I wasn't angry anymore, I was done. 2 weeks later, the developer people arrived. Melissa never moved in. The boxes went back on the truck. My parents stopped calling. The sale finalized quietly. I watched the house one last time, the place I'd rebuilt from nothing, and felt pride instead of loss. That house had never been my punishment, it had been my test. With the money, I bought my own place on my terms. No comparisons, no favoritism, just peace. Months later, I heard Melissa's apartment was sold. My parents needed the money. Funny how things balance out. I'm telling you this because stories like mine don't start with revenge. They start with being underestimated. If you've ever been given less, expected to accept scraps, or told to be grateful for unfairness, remember this. Sometimes, the thing they look down on holds more power than they can imagine.